So let's start by setting our motivation, recognizing that the purpose of this course is to understand more deeply the Buddha's teachings. The purpose of the Buddha's teachings is to explain how an ordinary sentient being can follow in the footsteps of the Buddha and achieve the same result that the Buddha achieved, to unlock our potential, to become fully awakened, just as the Buddha did, utilizing the methods that the Buddha explained. And all of that wisdom was compiled into the stages of the path to awakening by incredible masters like Lama. And here we have a way of working with that wisdom from Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe. The purpose of doing that is to be of incredible benefit to sentient beings. So we develop a mind that has confidence in the wisdom of the Buddha, a mind that has a sense of refuge, understanding, liberating power of the Buddha's teaching, and a mind that wishes to unlock one's own potential, not for one's own benefit, but to be of benefit. So we think along these lines and generate our motivation. All right. So we are in the section on how to generate bodhicitta using the method of exchanging self for other. And we would be starting with day 317. Or is it 316, I think. Or maybe I was just reading ahead. Sorry. Let's see. I was. Yep, sorry. 314 is where we would start. Are there any thoughts or questions about previous class, previous contemplations before we begin with day 314? Oh, all right. So in day 314, we've been looking at various parts of this second method of generating bodhicitta. The first method is the 7-point cause and effect method. The second method is exchanging self for other, or exchanging self-cherishing for other cherishing, cherishing others, however you want to phrase it. And within the second method, exchanging self for other, there are a number of, just like there are 7 different contemplations within 7-point cause and effect meditation, there are a number of different parts to the exchanging self for other method. They both lead to bodhicitta. And we've looked at the advantages of cherishing others, the disadvantages of self cherishing. I looked at trying to generate an understanding, a deep understanding of the kindness of others, the wish to repay that kindness, different aspects of this method. And now, in the next couple of contemplations, we're going to look at Tonglen, from a variety of different angles. It's part of the 7-point cause and effect. I'm sorry, it's part of the equalizing and exchanging self for other meditation, the second method. You may have come across it kind of on its own. Sometimes it's just presented as a Buddhist meditation, but technically it falls, it's part of the piece of the puzzle of the method of generating bodhicitta from the equalizing and exchanging self for other meditation. That's where it falls. And it plays the role in that method that the method, so in the 7-point cause and effect method of generating bodhicitta, there's the contemplation on great love and great compassion. And generally speaking, when a person is engaging in those contemplations, as part of that method for generating bodhicitta, a person thinks about the ways in which, so it's an analytical meditation, and a person thinks of the ways in which sentient beings experience suffering again and again, and they think of the ways in which sentient beings are never truly perfectly content or happy. And by contemplating that in kind of an analytical way, thinking of a number of different examples of suffering and a number of different examples of how sentient beings have some forms of temporary pleasant feeling, but never really experience genuine, true, lasting happiness, then the aspiration, the wish, the desire for sentient beings to be completely free of suffering and to possess genuine, real, lasting, permanent happiness arises. And we may use, there are different ways of accomplishing that. We may begin by thinking of how those examples impact oneself to, as an entry point, also one's loved ones, one's friends, one's family. um, so we use those entry points because we are ordinary sentient beings, and we already have some measure of love and compassion for ourselves and for those that we're already close to. So if we're going to develop the aspiration that embraces all sentient beings, it's sensible to use those beginning entry points. And then by using those, we are able to actually experience that genuine aspiration. And then all we really have to do at that point is broaden and deepen it through practice, through repetition. We are able to generalize what is a genuine aspiration, a genuine wish. If we jump right to kind of this nebulous mass of all sentient beings, then the actual visceral felt sense of the aspiration may not really be fully formed. And that is a little bit, because, it's in one way, it's easier. We can kind of think that we've generated it by just sort of visualizing, kind of almost like when you're looking at the merit field, or when you're looking at this drawing of like these tiny figures, and like, oh yeah, that's the wisdom lineage and the compassion lineage and so on, and there's, oh yeah, that's Lama Tsongkhapa. But you kind of get this general sense, and that kind of is the same thing that can happen when we try to visualize just countless sentient beings. But when we try to visualize, the person that we have difficulty with, that we actually know, and try to think, well, do I have love and compassion for that one person that I struggle with, that annoys me, that frustrates me? Um, then we realize only when I was kind of thinking about it in a really, really broad and abstract way did I feel like I was successful. And when I think about individual examples, then it starts to unravel a bit. So it makes a lot of logical sense to progress through that, to build on our contemplations, to start with those for whom that aspiration arises easily, and then to broaden it in ever increasingly large numbers, but not to just go right to this sort of, field of inestimable, inestimable, sentient beings that don't really have faces, that are just kind of out there floating in space. Um, so that logic is the same whether we're talking about the 7-point cause and effect, or whether we're talking about equalizing and exchanging self for other. Um, but the technique is slightly different. The technique in this method, equalizing and exchanging self for other, is Tonglen, rather than the maybe a little bit more intellectualized method of thinking of, these are all of the examples, like wars and famines and natural disasters and the different realms, the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm. These are all of the examples of suffering, and these are all of the examples of, um, kind of just in an abstract or intellectual way. With Tonglen, we we do want to follow that same logic of building, by maybe starting with ourselves, maybe starting with our loved ones, etc., and then again gradually expanding that. But the method's a little bit different, and that's what we're going to get into, is specifically how the method is new in this meditation, rather than how it was presented in the 7-point cause and effect meditation. So in day uh, day 314, um, sorry, trouble. Okay. So in day 314, Lama Yeshe says, the energy of attachment and selfishness is like a needle in our heart, and when we release it, we feel incredible joy. And then in the commentary, this idea of mind training, or lojong, is uh, presented, which is going to be the general um, technique. And so maybe because in day 314, Lama Yeshe talks about um, transforming, actually giving away, um, by releasing attachment. One way that we release attachment is to visualize giving it away, giving away our attachments. And one thing that we're attached to is the body. So we can transform the body, and so this is related to Tonglen, and maybe it would just be more helpful to start with um, going through the parts of the meditation, and then maybe bringing in these contemplate the text contemplations um, as they apply, um, so that we're just going kind of in order. So with Tonglen, it's a very visual meditation, and it has several different components. One component is holding a visualization of oneself in meditation. Um, and then so I'll briefly kind of explain the parts and then go back in a little bit more detail. So we do maintain uh, an awareness of oneself in meditation. We also then have one or more sentient beings visualized in front. Um, and like literally, so we may visualize ourselves in meditation, but we may visualize that as happening perhaps in a larger space, because we may have a desk in front of us or something. If we're, or our altar may be in front of us, so it may be difficult to think of sentient beings as being in front of us. So when we have a visualization of oneself in meditation, doesn't literally mean where one is physically located in space, as one is meditating, but we do hold an image of ourselves in meditation. That image we might place in a larger open space, in order to situate the other parts of the visualization. So while holding an understanding of oneself in meditation, we bring to mind one or more other sentient beings, and we place those in front, facing us. Um, that can be also oneself, but if it is oneself, then it would be a version of oneself that is experiencing a suffering, something that we struggle with from time to time. Could be anxiety, depression, loneliness, or migraines, whatever it might be that we have some familiarity with, that we comes up for us from time to time. And again, the reason that we might use that is because it's very easy for us to wish for oneself to be happy and to be free of suffering. So that's certainly an option. Again, loved ones is another option. And loved ones, some people find it, helpful to even use their pet. People are different. And, so however you feel, you might most easily be in relationship to a sentient being that you will be able to naturally and spontaneously give rise to a genuine aspiration for that sentient being to be happy and to be free of suffering. That's what you should start with. So we have oneself in meditation and then a sentient being in front. That sentient being, if it is oneself or if it is a different sentient being, we visualize that they are experiencing an obstacle, a difficulty, which can change day to day. We can work with this in different ways. One way of doing it is to go through the different realms and to visualize different kinds of sentient beings. Um, Another way is to use a version of the friend, enemy, and stranger meditation, where there's one friend, one difficult person, and then one stranger. That's another way. Um, there's a variety of different ways in which it can be done. And then instead of just abstractly thinking about, oh, this sentient being is subject to this kind of suffering, we bring a more visual component to that by visualizing that suffering as as in the nature of pollution or smoke, some sort of something like that, that is kind of obscuring them, kind of um, permeating their being. We think of that obstacle as being in that nature. Um, so that's another part of the visualization. And so we're maintaining an awareness of oneself in meditation, and then the sentient being in front. The sentient being is suffering. That suffering is in the nature of a smoke, of a pollution. Then we focus on oneself in meditation, observing this suffering sentient being. And by focusing on observing this sentient being who is suffering, we really try to give rise to strong feelings of wanting them to be free of that suffering. And again, like I say, if the sentient being that we are using is either a future suffering version of oneself or it's a loved one, then naturally, easily, we can give rise to that wish. Um, so we focus very, very strongly, very intently on causing that aspiration to arise in one's own mind. When we feel like that aspiration is stable, then we generate the sense in meditation that we are, due to the force of that compassionate wish, that we are actually drawing off the suffering that they are experiencing. That smoke, that pollution is being drawn toward oneself. And what it's specifically being drawn toward is that we visualize at the center, basically about the middle of the chest, inside the body. We visualize what they would call a dark seed, 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 like a mustard seed or a sesame seed. You can kind of just think of it as a small black dot. Um, but it's about the size of a seed, a mustard seed, a sesame seed. Um, and what that is representing is our normal, egoistic, self cherishing mind. Um, and so the compassionate wish, the compassionate aspiration that we've cultivated is drawing off this pollution, and it is coming toward or funneling into, absorbing into this dark seed at the heart center, in the center of the body. So it's penetrating the body and absorbing into this dark seed. And as that is occurring, then we, visualize that the pollution is decreasing, being drawn off, and it's absorbing into this dark seed. And the dark seed, in turn, is becoming more and more dense. It is, by virtue of absorbing the suffering of the sentient being, it is becoming heavier and heavier. Um, and then at some point, we generate the sense that we have drawn off that suffering, that they are no longer experiencing that suffering. It's also true that we ourselves are not experiencing that suffering. That suffering, it isn't as though we now visualize that oneself has that obstacle, or, if it's cancer, if it's, you know, whatever it might be, that we have visualized whatever specific obstacle. It isn't as though one's own body transforms into the kind of sentient being who is undergoing that suffering. All of that suffering in the aspect of the pollution is being fed to the self-cherishing mind, the egoistic, narrow mind, and it is simply absorbed into it, and sort of just being held there. When we feel as though that suffering, the sentient being in front, is completely free of it, then that dark seed implodes, and is replaced by a larger orb of golden white light, white light, golden white light, what have you. Um, that now represents our potential for enlightenment. It represents our capacity to have a mind that has perfected qualities. Um, so that is what that orb is now representing. The self-cherishing mind has taken on this, is through its willingness to face the suffering of others, it has now been obliterated, and it is replaced by not the self-cherishing mind, but our capacity for the perfected qualities of a Buddha. And now, so that phase of Tonglen is called the taking phase, where we take on, but again, important not to think that we ourselves become uh, someone who's facing that adversity. It's simply absorbed into the dark seed. Um, and then the second phase is giving. So here, in a way, day 314 is describing this aspect of the giving, um, where we visualize, kind of in a general way. This is kind of day 314 specifically is kind of more so talking about a general way of thinking of um, all of the things that we can offer to sentient beings, which is very similar to the giving part of Tonglen meditation. So now that we feel confident that the sentient being is not suffering, that's compassion, right? So with the 7-point cause and effect meditation, one of those contemplations was great compassion, wishing all sentient beings to be free of suffering. We accomplish the same thing here with the taking phase of the Tonglen meditation. And then the taking phase is finished, and we feel that that sentient being is no longer suffering. But that's still kind of neutral, right? They're not suffering, but they're not perfectly happy. They're just free of all suffering. So they're kind of neutral in a sense. Um, and now we want to give. We want to give them all forms of what they would call temporary and ultimate sources of happiness. Or you could say, happiness and the causes, all of the causes of happiness, true, real happiness. So you do think about, like, and when they say temporary, they mean things conducive, beneficial circumstances that are not enlightenment, things that are temporary. So, of course, we want sentient beings to have, good food to eat, clean water to drink. We want them to have an environment that's free of, war and that is at peace, where they have access to, being able to study. And, so we want all kinds of temporary, and we want them to have a strong, healthy, vibrant body that is able to engage in meditation and so on. But all of those, good food and so on, those are what we would call temporary, because um, they they wax and they wane to some degree, um, and they themselves are beneficial, but they're not real happiness. Good food, a safe environment, those are really, really helpful things. But still, a person who has good food and a safe environment is still a sentient being that has afflictions in their mind. They're still struggling with greed and envy and so on, ill will, etc. So we want to not only give them those external and internal temporary beneficial conditions, but we want really for them to achieve enlightenment. We want really for the realizations to dawn in their mind, the realizations of Sutra and Tantra, all of the realizations of the path. That's truly mainly what we want for sentient beings. But we recognize that in order for that to happen, they do need the time and the space and the conducive conditions to be able to study, to be free of disease, to have a safe, supportive environment, and so on. Um, so we think about all of those beneficial causes and conditions, but giving emphasis to the real sources, which are, the actual realizations of the path. And that's the giving phase. And so we visualize light rays from this orb at the heart center going out and encircling and absorbing into that sentient being and carrying with it all of those, as I said, temporary as well as ultimate sources of happiness. And we very clearly, very vibrantly visualize that they possess all of those beneficial conditions up to and including all of the realizations that they need to generate to achieve full enlightenment. And that's the giving phase of that meditation, which is great love. It plays the role of generating great love, as we did in the 7-point cause and effect meditation, when we just kind of thought about the ways in which sentient beings were bereft of true happiness and simply wished for them to be happy. Here we have a more kind of active, more visual part, or process or technique or method that we're using. But still, so Tonglen, its purpose is to take the place of the great love and great compassion meditations that are part of the 7-point cause and effect meditation. That is what it does. But it also, it's its additional power, maybe you could say, comes from actually confront, this aspect where we are drawing off the suffering and bringing it toward oneself, that's different, right? That's different than just thinking about how sentient beings suffer and wishing that they didn't. It's actually, and then the actual giving out of one's own good qualities, is different. So in a way, it has unique aspects to it, um, and it confronts self-cherishing, you could say, in a unique way, in a different way. Um, so because, as if anyone who's done the meditation, the mind feels uncomfortable when you're visualizing this mass of pollution that's in the nature of suffering, you know, actually coming toward oneself and penetrating one's own body. And even though, as I've said, one doesn't become a person who's experiencing those sufferings, still you're visualizing this cloud of suffering drifting toward one's own body, and the mind gets uncomfortable. And if the mind doesn't get uncomfortable, then we're not really concentrating very well on what we're doing. It's the mind is meant to be uncomfortable. Lama Yeshe says, allow the mind to be uncomfortable and do it anyway. Stick with it, which is part of also one, not doing too much too quickly. We shouldn't, if we tried to do that with really, really intense suffering right off the bat, it might be too much. We might not really be able to stay calm and so on, um, you know, it, while we're doing that. Um, so we want to start maybe with smaller sufferings, or as I said, maybe our own suffering, um, so that because there's a courageousness to that we're cultivating as well. And so we don't want to leapfrog into something that is beyond what we could comfortably handle. Okay. So I talked for a very long time. Any thoughts or questions? Yep.
What I was wondering was, um, what's the essence of doing this type of meditation? Is it to generate joy within us because we are like taking and giving?
So the purpose, I think, for one, we become someone who turns toward the suffering of others in a way that is different. I mean, with either contemplation, I think a person becomes the kind of person who becomes interested in the suffering of others, um, and becomes someone who, because great, compassion, the definition of compassion is that the wish for oneself and all other sentient beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. The definition of love is the wish for oneself and all other sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Um, so if we generate that toward one sentient being, then we have love and compassion for that sentient being. If we generate that toward all sentient beings, then we have great love and great compassion. Love and compassion that embraces every sentient being equally without any exceptions. And so that's the goal. The goal is to become someone who naturally, spontaneously wishes for all sentient beings to be free of suffering and to have happiness. And that is playing a role in the dominoes, the mental dominoes that give rise to bodhicitta, the wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's a piece of that larger intent, or that, that larger puzzle of how do we become a bodhisattva? How do we become someone who whose every action of body, speech, and mind is only geared toward wanting to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings? Great love and great compassion is an important part of that overall goal. Um, so, and of course, as you're saying, it's a constructive mental state. Great love and great compassion is a beneficial, constructive mental state, and as such, it's quite pleasant for oneself. It is joyous, as you're saying, when we can absorb the mind in great love and great compassion. The mind is at peace, the mind is spacious, the mind is open. There's a sense of joy and contentment that arises from that state. Of course, we're at the same time, we're recognizing that sentient beings um, are suffering, and that that's sobering. At the same time, that recognition that sentient beings suffer, um, but when we are actively engaged and wishing for them not to, um it's a pleasant, state to be in, rather than when we wish for some sentient beings to experience more suffering because we don't like them or we think that they deserve to suffer. That's quite a painful state of mind. um, but ultimately, the intent of this piece of the puzzle is to use these methods to gradually get to a point where we can say that genuinely, deeply, naturally, spontaneously, we do want every sentient being to be completely free of all suffering and to experience only true, genuine, lasting happiness.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? No. Okay, so day 315, Lama, I gave one particular, I described one particular way of doing Tonglen. In day 315, Lama Yeshe is going to give a slightly different, well, a different way of doing it. It's a more advanced way of doing it. So whether a person wants to work with that right away, or kind of build up to it, you know, but it's a particular way. It's called mounting. The phrase is mounting, giving, and taking on the breath. So using our actual cycle of respiration, of breathing, to engage in the giving and taking that I've described. So I'll read how Lama Yeshe is describing that. He says, start by breathing out through your right nostril. So with this, you could physically close, your left nostril if you want to, as if people may be familiar with the 9 round breathing meditation, where often you might physically close one nostril. A lot of times, though, in the visualizations, um, it's just that you focus on the particular nostril. You don't have to actually physically close the other one, but your focus is on the the nostril that's being addressed. Um, so start by, because of course, we can't breathe out only through one nostril, without, they say that the yogis, they can, the high yogis, they actually can choose to breathe out of just one, but we can't. Um, so you can physically close, or you can just kind of think of or concentrate on um, one of, whichever nostril is being talked about. So it says start by breathing out through the right nostril. Visualize the air you exhale in the form of white light, the essence of which is all of your positive energy and wisdom. This white light radiates to all sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara and beyond. It enters their left nostril, goes into their hearts, and generates in them great bliss. Visualize the air they exhale in the form of thick black smoke, the essence of which is all of their negativity, confusion, and heavy suffering. This dark, polluted energy enters your left nostril and goes down into your heart. He says, uh, don't leave it outside of you. Bring it right down into your heart so that your ego and attachment completely freak out, is what he says. Um, he says, do the above cycle of breathing white light out through your right nostril and black smoke in through your left 3 times. Then breathe out through your left nostril and in through your right 3 times. Then breathe out and in through both nostrils together 3 times. So again, like I mentioned, this is kind of a way of a version of the 9 round breathing, but using Tonglen, um, yeah, as a way of doing the 9 round breathing. At the end of each 9 rounds, concentrate for as long as you can that you and all sentient beings have been completely purified of all suffering, negativity, and dualistic mind, and are fully enlightened, experiencing everlasting bliss that pervades your entire body and mind. When you lose focus on this, repeat the 9 rounds once more. So that's a version of the 9 round breathing meditation. Because with the 9 rounds, typically you're breathing in, white light, and you're breathing out stale, dark energy just for oneself. So, but this is sort of Tonglen using the 9 round breathing. Um, and then there's another version too, where you do it, you could do it the way that I described previously, but um, just with each inhalation and exhalation being the giving and the taking. So you're inhaling, um, you know, each time you inhale, you're inhaling. It's just, it gets with that. What's more advanced about it is kind of, in a way, you kind of need the separation between giving and taking is different when you've mounted it on the breath. Like, when do because when you don't mount it on the breath, the giving and the taking phases are quite distinct. When you've mounted it on the breath, then it's a little bit more complicated. You're giving and taking kind of simultaneously. Um, so here, it's with this 9 rounds, Lama Yeshe is kind of giving you um, that sense of, okay, I'm going to do this now. I have 3, 3, and 3, and then at the end of 9, I think that all sentient beings are completely enlightened. So in that way, the way that Lama Yeshe is giving it to you here, it's like each of the 3 rounds is is leading up to the end of all of the taking that you need to do. So it's quite a skillful way to do it in the way that Lama Yeshe is giving it to you, this 9 rounds, because it kind of gives you that sense of like breaking that process down and giving you sort of an end point, which when you don't mount it on the breath at all, you're able to kind of have, um, by just deciding, okay, this is the giving phase and this is the taking phase, or this is the taking phase and this is the giving phase, you know. So that's another variation that we have. Any thoughts or questions? So then the last thing that we'll talk about is day 3. Oh, no, wait, turning the page. Day 316, where Lama Zopa, the quotation is practicing thought transformation is the clearest and most skillful way to seek happiness from our own mind. So here, Lama Zopa is talking about lojong, which is literally in English, uh, mind transformation or thought transformation, lojong. Or I'm sorry, thought transformation or mind training is the English translations of the word lojong. And in a way, it's kind of a genre of literature that's very much related to the concept of equalizing and exchanging self for other, because the premise of that concept is overcoming self-cherishing and cherishing others, um, and it culminates in bodhicitta. And the lojong teachings, in a way you could say it's almost like a genre of literature, Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist literature. The mind, it's often referred to as the mind training teachings or the Lojong teachings. Um, Kind of, I mean, in a way, sort of similar to Lamrim, in the sense that Lamrim is a genre of literature. You have, the 18 great Lamrim texts. Um, and, for example, Thupten Jinpa has a book called Mind Training. And it's a volume, it's like an anthology of individual mind training texts. Um, from a whole variety of Buddhist masters from all of the different Buddhist traditions, all of the 4 schools. There's, um, so it's not just like Lamrim isn't unique to the Gelug tradition. As I say, there's 18 different, Lamrim texts. Mind training is also, it's unique to Tibetan Buddhism, but it's not unique to the Gelug school of Tibetan Buddhism. There are many different mind training texts. Geshe-la on Sunday taught the 8 verses of thought transformation, which is one lojong text or mind training text. And one of the, so bodhicitta is a salient theme in the lojong texts. And transforming adversity is another major theme that you find in the lojong texts, which is what um, day 316 is talking about. Um, Finding ways to reframe what we are experiencing. And we've talked, this is, this general idea has come up in a variety of contexts over the different subject areas that we cover in the Lamrim. But the idea, generally is that, as it says here, overturning our habitual selfish traits and training the mind and working for others is the core of thought transformation practice. Without such a radical transformation, we cannot hope to develop great compassion, bodhicitta, and all the other minds that lead to enlightenment. So, in a way, it's a body of knowledge. It's a genre of uh, wisdom that is presenting unique methods for, just like Tonglen is a unique method. When we look at the 8 verses of thought transformation, um, it's a way of training the mind to not follow the self-cherishing mind, to not follow our existing ingrained habits and tendencies. um, you know so for example, and as I mentioned, a salient theme is transforming adverse conditions into the spiritual path, using adverse conditions to fuel our spiritual path. So instead of looking at um, those who we feel like are harming us or they're working against our interests, instead of viewing them as the enemy, instead of viewing them, which is just a story that we're telling ourselves, right? The mind of self-cherishing, the mind of self-grasping is telling us that what we should get out of life is other people saying nice things, doing nice things, making everything easier, um, you know, not giving us any kind of obstacles, just kind of everyone else working for our benefit so that we sort of float through life without traffic jams and without people who are rude and without, people cursing at us. And we just want to kind of float through things. That's what the mind of self-grasping and self-cherishing, that's the story that it's delivering to us. um, However, there are people who say unkind things. There are people who, those are so those are adverse conditions, that is happening. We are experiencing that. So we either can follow those ingrained habit patterns and we can respond to that with anger and, you know respond to that with ill will and so on. Or we can try to look at that person as our teacher and think this person is showing me the limits of my love, the limits of my compassion, the limits of my generosity, the limits of my patience. And if I want to achieve enlightenment, if I want to become a bodhisattva, which is what I'm saying, what I'm telling myself I do want, then those limits have to grow, they have to expand, they have to change. And this person is demonstrating to me where my limits are. And that's incredibly helpful information. If I don't know that, if I'm just staying in my own room, no, and I have no idea, like, can I tolerate being spoken to that way? Can I tolerate that happening? And if I don't know that, then I won't know what I have to do to grow further. Um, so we can, the Lojong teachings, in a way, are about telling ourselves a different story, um, thinking of that person as incredibly kind, incredibly beneficial, because without that feedback, we won't know where and how to grow into the kind of spiritual practitioner that we want to ultimately become. Um, so that's kind of just what day 316 is talking about, is kind of introducing this body of knowledge, this body of wisdom that's called the mind training teachings, the Lojong teachings. It's comprised of many, many texts that have a lot of common themes, and um, and the most salient of those themes is when I experience, because inevitably I will experience adverse conditions, how do I experience that? Not in a way that feeds my anger, my jealousy, etc., but that feeds my positive states of mind, my love, my compassion, my patience, etc. I did not drop anything. That didn't happen. You didn't hear anything. Okay. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, we will end there for today. Any final thoughts or questions? Nope. Okay. So we will pick things up with day 317 next. What's today? Monday? On Thursday. Okay. So we'll end with dedication. So we bring to mind the positive motivation that we established, and we think that by listening and contemplating, we've actualized that motivation, which has generated positive energy in the mind. That positive energy will ripen in the future in a supportive, beneficial way. We want that positive energy to ripen in a particularly spiritually beneficial and supportive way. So think about the ways in which you offer your own practice, your own positive energy in those spiritually meaningful, beneficial ways. All right. So yeah, I guess Shudundrip is here. So we have new classes and things starting on Wednesday with him. And yep. And we will pick this back up on Thursday.
Thank you.